Hi, this is Reg Athwal, and welcome to our channel for another episode for one of our shows, Family Business Experts, where I get a chance to interview an expert or an entrepreneur or both who can give us some insights into and wisdom and ideas that can help us either at a family level, business level, or ideally both. And I'm glad today that I've got not only an expert, but also an entrepreneur. And I believe he's going to give us ideas that will impact both areas. So to give you really a formal introduction, our guest for today on the show is Dr. Tony Alessandra, and he is a streetwise, college-smart perspective on business, having been raised in the housing projects of New York City to eventually realizing success as a graduate professor of marketing. He's an internet entrepreneur, business author, and a Hall of Fame keynote speaker. Tony is the CEO of Assessments 24/7 LLC. Can't wait to ask him more questions about how he's built that phenomenal company. And that's a company that offers a variety of online assessments, including the widely used DISC profile, the Hartman HVP, and Motivators, values in PIAV. A lot of acronyms, we'll ask him about all those, and several other 360-degree effectiveness assessments. Now, I've interviewed a lot of people on our channel that have published 4 books, 5 books, 6 books, but Dr. Tony has a prolific record. He's published, authored 31 books and going, translated into over 50 foreign language editions, including the newly revised, which has sold 250,000 copies, The New Art of Managing People. You can see on the screen Charisma, The Platinum Rule, Collaborative Selling, and Communicating at Work. Now, I could go on and on about Tony, but I think it's only right that we start interviewing him rather than the entire introduction being taken up over an hour. So on that note, Tony, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Reg. I appreciate it. Glad to be on.
Yeah, all the way from, you're in San Diego right now, is that right?
Yes, I am.
Is it true that the weather is always gorgeous there all year round?
It is, although the last couple of days we had mid-80s, which to us is like Africa hot, because our average temperature year-round is around 71 Fahrenheit, but we every so often get the Santa Ana winds. So our normal wind is from the ocean going east. The Santa Anas are from the desert going west, and that's when we get higher temperatures. But today is supposed to be in the 70s.
I've got a lot of questions for you, lots, and we'll see where it takes us. The first question I've got for you, and I'm going to go all over the place. There's no structure here, so bear with me. Is when was your first ever professional speech?
That was, and I know it very clearly, November of 1974. Now think about that, 46 years ago almost. I spoke for a rental company. They rented apartments in Atlanta, Georgia, and it was my first one. And I couldn't believe how much money I was making. I sold them an 8-hour program over 4 weeks. So 2 hours a week for 4 weeks. And I was getting paid $250. Unbelievable, over $30 an hour back in 1974.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
Yeah, that's Tony, it's such a pleasure talking to you about this because I was 2 years old at that time. Right? That is how long you have been speaking and running various businesses. And I've got books in my library of people that I absolutely rate. They're legends, and you have spent time with all of them at some stage in your career, whether it's the Jim Rohns of the world, the Zig Ziglars of the world, Dennis Waitley, who was also part of one of your book projects. I mean, you've been with all those legends and grew up as a speaker with them, didn't you?
Yes, absolutely. Did one of our tours, we did a big tour of Australia, several cities of Australia with Zig Ziglar and Dennis Waitley. Did another tour with Jim Rohn. And I love Jim Rohn because every talk on that tour of Australia was exactly the same but every speech I heard something different. It hit me a different way. It just was incredible. But yeah, I've traveled all over the world, even spoke in Dubai. For the American Advertising Association.
So maybe to give a few tips there to people like me who've been speaking for 25 years and nowhere near at your level, what are some of the tips that you can give, whether it's someone new in the area of professional speaking, just starting off, as well as people who've been doing this for a couple of decades, to get to your standard? What advice would you give them?
All right, first and foremost, be yourself. Do not try to be, if you're not a polished speaker, like I'm not, back in 1983, I believe it was, one of the grandfathers of public speaking here in the United States, Bill Gove, G-O-V-E, took me to the side, put his arm around me, and he said, Tony, you're trying to be a speaker too professorial. You need to be yourself. You're a New York City Italian. Off stage, you're funny, you're playful, you're mischievous. Let that come out on stage. And I have to tell you, Reg, when I allowed my speaking and my personality to come out in my speaking, my career just skyrocketed. So tip number one, be yourself. Don't try to emulate somebody else when it's not you.
Great advice.
Second, so number two, just like when you go to a restaurant, it's not just the meal that has an impact on you. It's also the ambiance, right? So make sure as a speaker, you pay as much attention to the meeting room, to the layout, doing your homework on the audience, the lighting, the speakers. Make sure everything is just right in advance. Look at the angles in the, in the room where people can or cannot see you. Spend as much time on that as you do in crafting and mastering the actual speech itself. And a third tip, Reg, no matter how big or small the audience, no matter how many standing ovations you get, there's always going to be one or more people in the audience that just didn't like you. For whatever reason. It could be that they're having a bad day. Don't let that get to you. You could have 1,000 people, 999 love you, one complains. Don't let that take away from the impact of your speech. And let me give you one, I was going to give you one final, what was the final one I was going to give you?
It's coming, it's coming, yeah.
Coming, see, yeah, at my age, it comes a little slower. And
well, even if go on.
That is, try not to be all things to all people. Try not to have, I can speak on 17 different topics. No. Focus. 2 or 3 topics, that's it. Become expert in those. Refine your craft in those. Do not try to speak on everything and anything just to get a speaking engagement.
Yeah, that's good. So some really, really good tips. And when you started off, what were some of those topics? I believe it was sales, wasn't it? When you sort of started, but then it evolved into some other topics.
Absolutely. So that first speech that I told you about back in November of 74, my topic was non-manipulative selling. Now think about that. Some people said it's an oxymoron. You cannot be non-manipulative and sell at the same time. It's contradictory. But that was my first talk. And as I continued to give that talk, there was one section in it on the 4 behavioral types, DISC, D-I-S-C, dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. There was one section in that program where people would come up to me afterwards and say, hey, would you come speak to my group or my company and only speak on this one area, because it was so new back in the early 70s. In fact, that was the beginning. The early 70s was the beginning of actually a company called Performax, who created the online DISC assessment.
Yes.
So it was new and people were just fascinated with it. And it was funny. The way I delivered it was funny. So for me, we might call it edutainment, education.
And how many people, Tony, were in that first audience of yours, that first speech?
Oh, yeah, probably no more than maybe 20.
Wow. And it all started from there on. And then people kept booking you, and then really, looking at some of your books, you really became an expert in that one core area of not just this, but everything, that ecosystem around profiling, assessments, hiring talent, retaining talent. It's all of those areas, isn't it?
Absolutely. And in fact, in 1974 was when I first started digging into that topic. At the time in 74, I was in my PhD program at Georgia State University in Atlanta. And my doctoral dissertation, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Buyer-seller similarity as a determinant of success in industrial selling. So basically—
Say that once more.
Yeah, buyer-seller similarity as a determinant of success in industrial selling. Okay. Why industrial selling? Because the product typically was exactly the same from one vendor to the other. Mm-hmm. So what was it that differentiated a person getting a sale from a person not getting the sale? And what I was looking at was to see if demographics, age, gender, etc., made a difference in somebody wanting to buy from you because they felt that they were more similar to you. Mm. And I had already gotten my doctoral dissertation approved. I didn't do the research yet, but I got the topic approved. That's one of the toughest things. And that's when I came across the DISC concept. And I went back to my doctoral dissertation chairman and I said, I want to change my focus from demographics to psychographics, psychographics being personality. And he, being a wise man, and by the way, a best-selling author himself, over 2 million copies of his book called The Magic of Thinking Big.
It's here. Yeah, it's in my life.
Dr. David Schwartz, he was my doctoral chairman. That was one of the reasons I went to Georgia State, because I had read his book as a teenager, had a big impact on me. He was one of my early mentors. And lo and behold, he's a prof at Georgia State University, and he agreed before I went there to be my dissertation chairman. But he said to me, no way, Tony, finish the dissertation. You got the topic approved, finish it, get your PhD, get out of here, and then focus on that subject if you're that passionate about it, when you finish, which I was.
Amazing. How do you ever keep score of how many presentations you may have delivered around the world to date?
I don't. I did at one time. I know that the last count was 2,500, and all over the world. I mean, you name it, I've almost been there. All over the Asia, all over Europe, certainly every state in the United States, Australia, South Africa, you name it.
So can we get some insights then into? I mean, on the screen here, we've got some of the books, Tony. Could you give us a few snippets, a few tips? Your real best secrets from some of the books, and leave our viewers with a few things to consider, whether it's around selling or managing people or communication. I love the cover there for charisma, and Platinum Rules, a very strong name for a book, and I'd love to explore a bit more about that one as well. Maybe a few, whichever one you want to start off with. Give us a few insights.
Yeah, well, let's start off with the very first one, which was Non-Manipulative Selling, and that's the second edition. That's not the original cover. The original book came out in January 1979, and it was called Non-Manipulative Selling, and the subtitle was Building Sales Through Trust. And so everything was built around, this whole concept of people don't buy because they're made to understand. They buy because they feel understood. The sale begins when the customer says yes, not when the customer says no, where you have to overcome objections. So it was a whole concept of a heavy emphasis on needs analysis, all right? How can I possibly solve a problem for you if I don't dig down and find out what that problem or opportunity? See, I believe in selling, there are two key things you want to uncover in information gathering: problems you can help them solve, and or opportunities that they haven't taken advantage of that you can help them seize. So problems to solve, opportunities to seize. So the whole concept of information gathering is digging deep into, tell me a little bit about your business. And then based on your answer, my next question comes up, and so on. So then from there, we move into, once I've done my needs analysis, we go into the solution. And of course, most sales, we call that the presentation. And the presentation is where the salesperson presents the solution. But in non-manipulative selling, basically what we want to do is get the customer involved and say, look, we have a couple of different ways we can go. Let's look at our options. We can do this. We can do this. Here's the pros and cons. Here's the pros and cons. And getting feedback along the way so that the customer is helping you build the solution. See, when the salesperson simply presents the solution, it's easy for a customer to say yes or no. But when a customer helps you build the solution, it's much more difficult to say no to something that you helped build. And then, of course, when it comes to
priceless wisdom there from Tony, and these principles from 50 years ago, I mean, they apply today, and people have complicated it, haven't they?
They have, yeah. And I will tell you that non-manipulative selling was way ahead of its time. It was like swimming upstream, because back then everything was, give your pitch and close, and overcome objections and close again. And our close, we called it an open close, where if we went through this process correctly, the mutual discovery of problems or opportunities, the mutual coming up with a solution, then our quote close was, where do we go from here? How would you like to proceed? What's the next step? We call it an open question with direction, or an open close with direction. Where do we go from here? What's our next step? And then, that quote that I gave just a few minutes ago, the sale begins when the customer says yes. When I was going through sales training, I worked my way through college, Reg.
Yes.
I went to the University of Notre Dame. I was a freshman in 1965, graduated in 1969. But I worked my way through school, paid for my entire tuition, room, board, travel, everything by selling door to door.
Where's my youngest son? Are you listening?
Yeah. My father was a New York City cab driver. I mean, they did not have the money to send me to Notre Dame. But my mother, they did have enough money to pay for my freshman year. And that was it. Yeah. And I was lucky to find in that summer between my freshman and sophomore year, a job of selling cookware, pots and pans, door to door. Back then I was selling a 10-piece set of surgical stainless steel cookware with a copper interior. I was selling it for $300. Think about that. 1966, 10 pieces of cookware, 4 of the pieces were lids, right? There are only 6 pots for $300.
Wow.
And the first summer, this is when I was 19 years old, Reg. The first summer, in 9 weeks, I made just about $5,000. 1966. I had more than enough money to pay all my tuition, travel, room, board, spending, you name it. And I did that for 3 consecutive
Isn't that
summers.
the equivalent of like $50,000 today?
It may be. I mean, it was a lot of money back then.
Tony, can I ask you, when it comes to that character, your DNA, to go and do that, think that way, behave that way, with all the family businesses that we deal with, one of the key things is we look at childhood and the influence and how you get conditioned and the values that you're born with. So, who influenced you growing up, and what was your sort of roots growing up, and to have some of these traits and do this at such a young age?
I think that's a very good question. And I think it really did mold me to what I do today and what I've done in my adult life. My biggest influence as a child was my mother. Now, keep in mind, I am the firstborn Italian in a family. So that says something.
Yes.
My mother pushed me to excel. My mother pushed me on education. Education is significant in my life, and that's why I went through 4 years for my bachelor's degree, 1 year for my MBA, another 3 years for my PhD. Education was significant. The more you learn, you've heard this, the more you earn.
Yeah.
So that was a big driving force for me. My mother also instilled in me this motto. Now listen to this. You need to go the extra what?
Mile.
Did you hear that? Yeah. But my mother did not say that. My mother told me you've got to go the extra inch.
Interesting.
And what she said was a mile seems so long. The extra inch was, and of course she called me Anthony. Anthony, every day go the extra inch in various aspects of your life. In other words, improve one more relationship, maybe by saying hello to somebody, doing a good deed, complimenting somebody, learn a new word every day, do one extra push-up or sit-up or rep with weights. Everything in life was go an extra inch. And her philosophy was, when you go an extra inch every day, eventually after 500 something days, you've gone the extra mile. So my whole early life was built on personal improvement. And that's how I got that book, you know, The Magic of Thinking Big. I read all these self-help books, Think and Grow Rich, you know,
but you've just simplified it, Tony. I mean, you know, you've just kept it really simple with your mother's philosophy there. I love that about the inch, because you're absolutely right. That doesn't come across as difficult, but yet those pieces all added up over 3 months, 6 months, a year make a huge difference, don't they?
They do. They do. Even now, you know, at my age and having gone through all this, even now, I try to make one phone call a day to a friend or a business associate. And with my colleagues, one of my phone, you know, when I call them up, say hello, do the, you know, hey, I haven't talked to you, you know, for a while. Since the last time we spoke, what have you discovered that's been working for you? I have to tell you, Reg, some of the ideas that I get just from people telling me, well, I did this, or I found this particular thing that is not working and I cut it out. Just those things are personal growth, even at my age. It's unbelievable.
That's really good. Powerful question. So can I ask you, going back to parents, well, are you a first generation American, second generation? You know, what's the connection with Italy as well?
Yeah, so I am a second generation. Three of my grandparents were from Sicily, and one from Naples. So all four from Italy. And in fact, a couple of years ago, I traveled with my wife to Sicily with a Sicilian chef from San Diego. And we went to the three places where my grandparents were born. We went to Palermo. We went to, that's where my father's father was born. We went to Sciacca, which is totally due south on the coast of Sicily, the south western coast. And that's where Sciacca is. And that's where my father's mother was born. Then we go all the way all the way east along the southern shore. And we get to Modica, which is known for its chocolate. And that's where my mother's mother was born. My mother's father was born in Naples. They all came over, I believe, in the 19 teens. Okay. My father was born in Lodi, New Jersey. My mother was born, believe it or not, in Quebec. Really? And it was a trip that my grandparents made to Canada. My mother was born in Quebec, came back to the United States, and many, many years ago, my parents had never been to Europe, so I was going to send them to Europe. And my mother went to go get a passport. She hadn't had a passport. Finds out she's not a U.S. citizen.
She's European.
Well, she's Canadian.
Oh, sorry, because of the Quebec. Okay.
Yeah, born in Canada. So they told her she had to go back to Canada and get her birth certificate. Well, the hospital and the whether it was a hospital or whatever where they had her birth certificate, it had burned down. So there was no birth certificate. So now she's somebody who has no country. Fortunately, they went to a congressman here in the United States. He intervened on her behalf and got her a U.S. passport, and she was able to go to Italy.
But is there clarity on when she was born? Because I remember my grandmother going through a similar thing, but no one could really tell us how old she really was. So when she passed away in her 90s, most people thought she was actually a lot older. You know,
yeah,
because no one had proof on even date of birth in those days. It was amazing.
Yeah, somehow she did have proof. You know, she had her birth day and year, and that's what we celebrated. We hope that.
So have you got siblings?
I do. I have a younger brother, 3 years younger than me, a younger sister, 7 years younger than me. My brother lives like a mile away from me here in San Diego. My sister lives in Las Vegas. My sister is, even though I am a professional speaker, off stage, I'm relatively quiet. In fact, Reg, on our calls that we do with our group of people at the consortium, I don't say much, do I? I'm kind of quiet unless somebody asks me a question.
Yeah. That's because you're wise. That's because you're wise, Tony. You just listen. And you know all the things we're talking about anyway, and you just listen.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, here's another saying. When I talk, I only know what I know. But when I listen, I not only know what I know, I also know what you know. Listening is power. But that's not necessarily why. I am quiet off stage. I'm what they call an ambivert. You know, you've heard of an extrovert and an introvert. An ambivert is a little of both. And I am a little of both. So when the situation calls on, and I'm also, by the way, a Gemini. So that you know.
Well, I have come across this before, Tony, with speakers where there's a certain breed where once you put them on the platform, they come across like extroverts. They come off the platform and they really just want to go into their cocoon and be on their own and then not talk to anybody. So it is, you know, it's extremes of both sides, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's sort of the way I am. It's like you wind me up, put me on stage, boom, you know, whoa, this is a high extrovert. When I come off stage, I am more quiet, but I'm not the type that totally goes away. I do stand around, I do talk with people, I shake hands. You know, I don't want to be somebody that just gives the talk and runs away. I want to handle questions. I want to interact with people. I want to go on the break with them. But after that's done and they go back into the meeting, I leave. I'm gone.
So Tony, let me ask you, when it comes to building legacies, you know, that's what we do with our firm, and it's all about helping families build legacies. You know, you've gone from being a great speaker, globally acclaimed speaker, prolific author of many books, been on many platforms. But well, I need to ask you, at what age did you decide to become an internet entrepreneur? You know, and how did that start? You know, most of the time you hear about these unicorn companies being built by these 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds. But you've got to share the story of how you've ended up building a phenomenal business, okay, and how that started.
I will tell you, Reg, in my 20s and 30s, there was no internet. There was no computer other than the big computers. I decided to actually build this business. Now, I've been in the assessment business since 1974, but it was all paper-based. Everything was paper-based. It was 96 when I was releasing what I was hoping to be my biggest bestseller. It did not turn out that way. The Art of Managing People was. But that's when the Platinum Rule came out. And that really was my most important book to me. Mm-hmm. And that was in 1996. And in the summer of 96, I decided to put that assessment online and let people take it for free. So I had somebody build this assessment for me, went online, let people take it for free. My goal was to sell the book when people took the assessment. There were 10,000 plus people every month taking that assessment. It won all kinds of awards. USA Today, it won a Webby. They used to call it a Webby, like an Oscar. It really was good. And after a few years,
the platinum rule became the assessment tool itself.
Yes.
At that stage. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So people just answered 18 questions. They got this report that told them what their style was. And then in 2000, that blinding flash of obvious hit me. This could be a business. And it wasn't just that this could be a business. In 2000, we came across Y2K, where there was all this questioning about what was going to happen, as computers switched over.
Yeah.
And then in the United States, we had the technology crash.
Mm-hmm. Well, that one wiped me out back in 2000. So I felt that.
It wiped me out too. Yes, it wiped me out. And it was then that I said, you know what? I've been speaking too much. I've been traveling too much. I think I may have told you, Reg, on one of our group meetings that just on American Airlines, I have 12.5 million frequent flyer miles.
Right, so
that's how much travel I've done. And in 2000, I just said, you know what? I just cannot do this at the same intensity that I have been doing it. Because in 1999, I remember this vividly, I did 99 paid speeches all over the world. And I said, I'm going to start building this assessment business as a business. And as it grew, I'm going to cut back on speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I lucked out, Reg, because as I built this, and of course, I did not physically build it. I was the person orchestrating it.
Yes.
But I had IT people who were building it for me.
But you were the creator. You're the one who founded it. You had the vision for what you wanted to achieve, and then you built your team. Yeah, you practiced what you preached from your books.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I did that, and when I built that, I also took my speaking staff, and I spun them off into their own separate business called speakersoffice.com and said, look, now you don't work for me. You guys work for yourself. And every time you book me a speech and sell my books or whatever, you get a percentage. And I'm going to get you other speakers to manage just like that. And here it is today. The business is still going. All right. It's been 20 years now.
That's fantastic.
One of their key speakers now is a woman called Brene Brown. I don't know if you know that name, but she is really, really big. Mm-hmm. She has a book called Dare to Lead, which is one of the best sellers, Wall Street, New York Times, etc. But anyway, as the business grew, I started cutting back and speaking. And of course, here we are now in 2020. I'm dating this recording, I'm sorry. But here we are in 2020. And, from back in 2000, when I only had one other person working with me, and quickly thereafter, I got a second one. I really needed 2 IT people. And here I am now with 13 full-time employees. And the business generates enough revenue that I never, ever have to give another speech. I don't need the money. And we have customers all over the world, Reg.
So you churn out, your online platform churns out how many assessments per month now?
Oh, well, one of our clients is Tony Robbins. Do you know who that is?
Well, I think I've heard of the name.
Yeah. He's one of them. I
want to get him on my show. So if you could make that introduction, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's going to be tough, but I'll do my best. It's hard to get through to him, but anyway, he alone does somewhere between 30 and 40,000 DISC and motivators assessments every month. So I would say every month we probably do 50 or 60,000
So he's your biggest customer.
Oh, yeah, by far.
Yeah.
But he was not my first customer. And this is really what helped us. My very first customer was Dr. Ken Blanchard. Excellent. He had written the book, the 1 Minute Manager. But getting him as my first customer not only created the revenue we needed to keep going, but when I approached other people and they realized that Ken Blanchard was one of the customers, they felt it was safe to come onto our platform. Now, let me tell you one thing, Reg, about, my background is marketing and sales. So, and it's not computers. Although when I went through my doctoral program, when you go through a PhD program, you're supposed to take 3 languages or at least 3 courses in language. It could be the same language. But when you get a PhD in business administration, the languages could be computer language. And that's what I did. I took BASIC, Fortran, and COBOL, which I don't even know if they're around anymore. But what it did, Reg, is it gave me the mentality of how programming is done. So when I started building the online platform for assessments, I knew how to talk to my IT people about what I wanted and what the flow should be. But here's the key, and I think this is the key for everybody who's a business person, is that when I created the dashboard 1.0, I went to all my customers and I asked them these questions. What do you like most about it? What do you like least about it? What am I leaving out that I should have put in it? And what's there that I need to make better? And as I started getting this feedback, we started making corrections to 1.0 and until it got to the point that we had to actually go back and from the ground up build 2.0. Right now, Reg, we are building, and hopefully by the end of the summer it'll be done because it's a big job. I'm sure hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of lines of code, but we're building 5.0, again, always based on customer feedback. So
I love that. So can I ask you, Tony, a couple of questions around that, which is, you started your internet entrepreneurial career, I'm assuming around your early 50s. Yeah.
Yeah, I was, yes.
Okay. So if somebody else is around that age today who's thinking, it's too late for me, okay, there's too many young tech geniuses out there who know everything, I've got no chance. Plus the crisis situation is getting people to rethink about their careers and their future business aspirations. What advice would you give to those people with the journey you've been through? And based on what you know today, if you were going to do that all over again, what would you do? How would you do it?
Yeah, so, but my word of advice is whenever somebody says they're too old, I'm too old to get a college degree, I'm too old to start a business, 10 years from now, you're just going to be 10 years older and you haven't done anything. If you have a creative idea, if you have a passion, that's the key though, Reg, a passion to do something, but you feel you're too old, you're not. Just dive in and hire talent if you can, which is what I did. I hired talent to work with me to build that dream, to build that assessment platform. So, even though, hey, there are these young people out there that are starting all these creative online and internet businesses and AI business, artificial intelligence, hey, we can hire them and let them work for us. And then they can go off on their own if they want. But don't be afraid. If you are passionate about something and hopefully have the revenue to do it, do it. And I think in today's environment, Reg, where we have COVID-19 and everything that's going on, this is a perfect time, especially when not all the businesses are open and we've had to self-quarantine. This is a perfect time to educate yourself in the time that you have to master something that you are passionate about. Let me tell you, one of my colleagues, Jim Cathcart, he is also a Hall of Fame speaker. gifted person.
He's a great speaker. Very good.
He is very, very good. And he tells a story about Earl Nightingale, who was a great, in his own right, a great speaker here in the United States, and also had a radio show with a great, deep, bass voice. But he said, you can become an expert in anything you want by just studying 1 hour a day. And in 5 years, you will become a premier, possibly world-class expert on that subject. Just 1 hour a day. Of course, Jim jokingly tells the story. He was a government employee. He said, 1 hour a day? I've got 8 hours a day.
Very good.
And that's what
reduce that time.
That's it. So, we're always facing both struggles and opportunities.
But you're just saying start. Yeah, go and start. Go and hire the best people. Find ways of bringing them into your team. What about the other side, Tony? With your business career, entrepreneurial career, what's the biggest mistakes you've made? It was like a real slap in the face type mistake. What have been some of those moments?
Well, with the assessment business, probably not hiring as many people early on as I should have, because our really incredible growth happened as soon as I started upping the hiring of more sales and marketing people and more training people. And once I did that, which was probably in 2013, our minimum growth per year has been at least 20%, and it's been as high as 50%. So it really has been incredible. Even now, here we are in the middle of what's going on in the world with businesses closing and many of them not open yet. Our assessment business, year over year, year to date, is ahead of last year. Now, not the 20% minimum that we have experienced over the last almost 7 years. But
yeah, but you've got a proper tech firm. I mean, Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion when there was less than 13 people in the company. So, Tony, watch out. You never know who's going to be coming along, knocking on your door. You've got a proper tech firm, 13 people, churning out 500,000 to 1 million assessments a year and growing. I mean, on that note, Tony, do you feel there's an exit in the future? I mean, what's your succession plan of how your legacy continues?
Well, that first guy that I hired back in 2000, January of 2000, his name is Brandon Parker. He was 23 years old. He is now my CEO. So now he's 43. I'm 73, so 30-year difference. And he's my succession plan. Now, the question is, how far does it go? Reg, you asked me what drove me from early childhood, and I told you my mother and constant self-improvement. But I just can't see myself retiring. Now, will I work less and maybe only work on big deals for this company? Yeah. But my CEO runs the company now. I don't.
Yeah, you're not involved. You're not involved in the day-to-day at all. But you are. But you are strategic. So you're on the business.
Yes.
And you have a pulse of what's going on, and you influence things, and you create alliances and opportunities. But you don't get involved in the operational stuff. Yeah.
No, my CEO is this kid who at 23 and now at 43 has grown so much. Our employees love him. They love him. They'll do anything for him. And his managerial ability has just blossomed. And so he manages everything. He manages the company. I manage him. That's it. And managing him requires very little on my part.
Can I ask you, Tony, the relationship you have with him? Because in the context of family businesses out there, the family, what is family is changing. The definition of family. So there's a lot of businesses out there where it may not go to bloodline next generation. It may go to an employee that is passionate, loyal, grown with the founder. That person has equity, and eventually that person's family end up taking the legacy forward. I was on a webinar this morning talking about a case study in Scotland, fifth generation accounting firm, first, second, third generation owned by the family, no next generation bloodline. A manager who's been in there for 25 years decides to do a management buyout. And then her son is now the fifth generation person taking the business to the next stage. But it's changed hands in terms of families. Mm. So is your CEO, do you treat him like a CEO or do you treat him like your son?
Well, I will tell you that my two children think that I treat him more as a child than I do them. And right. He sees himself as my son, as part of the family. In fact, my wife wanted him, I'm on my second marriage, we'll celebrate 30 years this year. Mm-hmm. So she has two girls, I have a boy and a girl. Her oldest is 44, my oldest is 44. Of course, they're like they are brother and sister. Mm-hmm. But my wife, Sue, wanted Brandon, my CEO, to marry her daughter. But there just wasn't that chemistry there. But that's how much she loves him.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and he's going to take the company forward. We're structured as an LLC, which is a partnership, and I have a greater share than he does, but he has a fairly sizable share of the business. But my share, I have taken more than 50% of my share, and my children, mm-hmm. All four of them, my two stepdaughters and my son and daughter, my brother and my sister, they all have pieces of the business and get profit sharing from it. So
that's already structured. That's in place now, yeah?
All in place.
And
yes.
then can I ask you, with a lot of family businesses that we deal with, you have a situation where, okay, you've got currently your CEO who's not bloodline, but you treat him like family. He's going to be the successor. He has a percentage of the company. The rest is owned by family. Now, the rest of the family, are they active as board members? So from a governance point of view and protection, they make sure the right things happen for the future. Is that in place?
No, it's not. And the reason is none of them have any interest or expertise in this business. The only person who conceivably can take it forward if something happened to me, if I died or became incapacitated, would be my wife. And she knows the business enough that she can not manage it, but certainly talk with Brandon about major decisions that need to be made. But,
and is there any other grandchildren where you feel there could be someone in 10 or 15, 20 years that may want to join this business and take it to a completely different level? Because that happens a lot around the world. You skip one generation and another family member comes along who's passionate, hears the grandfather's story and say, wow, I want to continue this.
Yeah, so we have two grandkids. One is just turned 4 and the other is not even 1, not even 6 months. So we're talking way more than 20 years. And quite frankly, I don't believe that my CEO will want to keep the business another 20 years. Right. I don't think so. I think he would want to sell it. I know people have approached us. They've told us what our multiple of EBITDA would be. Usually I've heard somewhere between 5 and 10, depending on certain accounting issues.
And if you've got 2 people bidding at the same time, that would help.
Yeah, that helps. But a minimum of 5.
Yeah.
And I think, if the price is right, who knows,
If the price was right and it happened sooner rather than later for both you and the CEO, and, you've got all the time in the world. I was talking to a family about this just the other day. you're financially free. It's not about the money. What would you do now?
Well, that's my dilemma. I've talked to my wife about that. Now, she and I have traveled the world. We've been almost everywhere. So the desire to travel is not as great as if we never traveled before. And just so that you know, I personally can travel for free on American Airlines, always first class, never pay a penny. So wherever American Airlines flies. So
well, you've only got 12.5 million miles to get through.
yeah, so I just don't, you know, maybe we do more cruises. I would do more reading. I love to do crossword puzzles. I love movies. You know, I would do more of that, more exercise. I mean, we do exercise, but I would, the thoughts in my mind, I'd love to do more. Whether that really would happen is a whole other issue. But certainly I want to, I just celebrated last week my 73rd birthday. And I said, hey, I'm not having a birthday party. I don't want to make a big deal about it. The next party I'm going to have, and I'm asking people to hold the date, is June 2nd, 2047. That's my 100th birthday party. And that's where I want to live to 100. I want to be, in essence, physically fit, not in pain. And it requires eating well, exercising, just doing the right things. And my wife is like that. I'm sure she'll live to that age. And
what is it about 100 though? I mean, it could be 98, it could be 99. It's what is it about?
It's just a magic number, you know, 100 years. And you know, the reason I picked that is because earlier I gave an example of that guy, Bill Bove, who told me to speak with my personality. He actually did that when he was in his 70s. He told all of his speaker buddies, me included, he invited us to his 100th birthday party. Now, he didn't make it, but he got into the very high 90s. So it is something, if you have this goal, something that you're shooting for, it's more likely to happen if it's in your mind that you want to make it happen. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing.
So I'm 47, you know, a few years away from 50. What words of wisdom and advice would you give me as I look into the future?
Well, again, just simple things. Eat well, exercise, read, master what you do. I mean, become the expert. You are already probably the expert in your line of work, the world expert in your line of work. So it's hard to go that much beyond. It's like asking Einstein to become more Einstein.
But you know what, Tony, what you said earlier on about your mother's principle about going that inch. You know, I wake up every morning saying one family at a time. Okay. And we don't have proper data globally, but there may be 100 million family businesses in the entire world that impact probably over 1 billion employees. So there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do, but one family at a time, like you said, that inch.
That inch, just go that extra inch, and just, you know, just be focused. I find too many people who get distracted by shiny objects and pulled away from what they're good at and what they love. You know, just focus on what you do well, do it well. I try to always put my customers first. I do not, we have a term here, nickel and dime, you know, people or companies or customers. Just, you know, if what you're doing right now is working for you, keep doing it and do it even a little bit better, an extra inch better each day. If there are certain things that you want to improve on, you know, ask your wife, ask your closest friends and colleagues, you know, hey, if there was one thing you would give me as a piece of advice to be a better husband, father, business owner, just a better person, a better friend, what would that be? And just look for ways to constantly improve yourself. Here I am, 73, and I still look for ways to be better at what I do. Will it make a big difference in my life? At my age, probably very little, but it's just something that keeps me going. And at your age, 47, my God, you got a lot of years ahead of you. Just make sure that those years are doing things that you love and doing it as healthy, physically and mentally as possible.
Yeah. Wow. Powerful stuff. I mean, when it comes to health, I mean, we talk about you're an early morning person. Yeah. Some
Yes.
people prefer to, they work till very, very late. I get some clients message me at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and they're wide awake. So what's your routine when it comes to health? Do you meditate? Is that important to you? How do you find ways to get centered?
Yeah, I don't meditate.
Do you believe in meditation?
I don't disbelieve in it.
Okay.
I know it works. It's just something that is not in my DNA. I just am very focused. I go to bed somewhere between 8 and 9 p.m. I get up somewhere between 4 and 5 a.m. I take my dog for a walk. I go for a lengthy walk with my wife. Not every day. I may lift weights. I drink a couple of cups of coffee, and I'm on my computer doing my work. Every so often I get up and walk around, get everything moving, get my heartbeat up, and that's it. I just actually went for a physical on Monday, got my results, my blood work on Monday night, and every single thing that was measured, you get all these things that have been measured when you do a blood test, and every single thing was right where it was supposed to be. Not one single thing.
So have you, I mean, the questions around health, you obviously exercise, you do your walks. Do you drink alcohol?
I have 1 glass of wine a day.
Interesting. And have you ever smoked?
Never, not a single puff my entire life.
There you go. So these
both my parents smoked heavily and both died from cancer.
And what about your food? I mean, are you vegetarian, non-veg? Is it a mix? What's your?
Yeah, I eat whatever's put in front of me, as long as it's not moving. It cannot be moving. But I will tell you, certainly over the years, I would say my wife certainly leans much more toward vegetarian and fish. So obviously by default, that's what I do. But we eat very little meat. We do eat meat, but very little. In fact, the most meat I eat would be meatballs, because I'm Italian. That I gotta have my meatballs, and that's it. We primarily eat fish. Like last night, we went out to dinner. Restaurants here are opening, so we went out to dinner, and I had ahi, tuna, as my main course. That was it. So yeah, we eat well. A lot of fruit and vegetables, grains. Just if there's one really bad habit that I have, it's sweets.
What, dark chocolate under the pillow?
Well, dark chocolate I love.
How did I know that?
Yeah, it goes beyond that. I think I'm addicted to sugar.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, I'm allergic to it.
Yeah.
When I eat sugar, any kind of sugar, and I don't add sugar to anything, but if I have ice cream or a donut or a piece of cake or even dark chocolate, I start itching. But I still eat it. So that's I wish I could get rid of that one bad habit.
You know what? No one's perfect. Everyone has something. I mean, I'm glad you've actually said that. Otherwise I was thinking Tony, you've just got it all made. It's perfect. But now I know it's the sugar and the dark chocolate.
Sugar, yeah.
Tell me, when it comes to living in San Diego, if you weren't living there, where else would you consider living in the world? Or is San Diego the perfect place for you?
San Diego, well, okay. When I first moved to California, to San Diego in 1976, California was the Golden State. That's its nickname, and it was the Golden State. It has since not become golden anymore. It's tarnished, in my opinion, just my opinion. San Diego, because of the weather and the environment here, and all the other things that are California, not job friendly, high taxes, etc. I allow it because of where we live. Now, I was born and raised in New York City and New Jersey. So the first 22 years of my life, 23 years of my life, that's where I was other than college. Mm-hmm. And, that is my DNA. Even though I've been in California now for 44 years, I'm a New Yorker and always will be. Now, but I would never move back to New York. I love visiting New York, for a few days at a time, but I would never live there. So where else would I live? I really don't know. My wife and I love New Zealand. I love the people of Australia. Mm-hmm. I love their attitude. To me, the people of Australia, they are like the people of the United States in the 50s and early 60s.
Right.
But I don't think my wife would move to another country. Whatever problems we have in the United States, and believe me, we have plenty of them. Other countries have the same thing, maybe different problems, but every country has their problems. Well,
the reason I ask a lot of people these questions, and I'm just fascinated and curious, what the answer would be. And yeah, the grass is never greener. Wherever you go, you've always got pros and cons. But I think at the end of the day, the more people I meet who are owners of large businesses, chairmen, people who are retiring, I found that most of them are interested in things that are very simple, simplicity. And that can be had pretty much anywhere in the world. I think the other thing I've noticed when I ask this question is just around social life, especially with women. If they've got a social life and a community, that's good for their health, it's good for their soul, they're happy. And whilst you could be in another place in the world where it's all great, but if you don't have that aspect, then there's still something missing, so.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Reg, I tell my wife, I just say this, I don't think it's true, but I say it, that I could live anywhere as long as I have high-speed internet, cable television.
Yeah. So it's not wife, it's Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Wi-Fi. So that's what I want. Yeah. And as for relationships, even, let's say for women, what we're doing right now, Reg, how different is that from actually sitting across from each other on the couch and talking to each other? The technology today allows us to be in touch with people much more than before the technology. Especially if you're talking to friends and family who are in other places that you are not able to visit. Now I'm able to visit, I'm able to talk to my grandson every day if I want.
Yes.
And he's not physically here. So
I think with technology, bandwidth, devices, whatever, satellite dishes, everything's evolved and got faster and better. However, there is still that other part of, you can do this for so long, but there's that, we're human beings, we have a heart, we're emotional creatures, we need that connection as well, that hug, that connection with family and friends. And I think this year with the pandemic, I think a lot of us want to get to that stage later on in the year as we get past all of these lockdowns and everything else. So, and I think we'll appreciate it more as well.
Yes, oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, on that note, you are a legend. You're full of wisdom, insights, great ideas. You've helped me tremendously in this interview. I wanted to do this because your story needed to be heard. I think you can inspire many people. I'm looking forward to your next book, which has to be your autobiography.
Well, that'll be interesting.
Yeah. All these little stories, all the things you've done, I think, you know, it will inspire many people, not only to be great speakers, great authors, become internet entrepreneurs later, your second half of your life, you know, and it's wonderful. So Tony, I really appreciate your time. And thank you for everything that you've shared today. I hope our viewers enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave your comments, and go into the description area to find out more about Assessment 24/7, Tony's company, and also his personal website, and link to find out more about his books as well. So Tony, thanks a lot, and we'll catch up soon.
Okay, Reg, thank you for having me as a guest. I appreciate it.
Bye for now. Thank you.
Thank you.